My people say when a child enters your home, blessings follow, but not all blessings come wearing light. This is the story of Madam Nkemdilim, a woman of great wealth but empty arms, who opened her doors to an orphan in search of motherhood, only to discover that the price of love can sometimes be life itself. Sit down and listen well, because what happened in that house will make you question the meaning of family, faith, and forgiveness. In the bustling heart of Lagos, where the city never truly sleeps and the air hums with ambition, there lived a woman called Madam Nkemdilim, though everyone simply called her Madam Nkem. Her name meant, "Let me be comforted," but her heart, despite her wealth, was far from it. She had everything a woman could dream of: a flourishing chain of fashion boutiques across Nigeria, a mansion in Lekki Phase 1 that could rival a governor's lodge, and a husband, Chief Tobena Okafor, who was respected, handsome, and known for his booming real estate empire. Together, they were the kind of couple that gossip magazines fawned over: well-dressed, well-spoken, and well-connected. But beneath all the glossy perfection, a silent wound festered. They had no child. All this money, yet no cry of a baby. It began as a whisper, like most gossip in Nigeria. First, it was among Madam Nkem's staff, her housemaids, whispering during laundry, the driver murmuring to the gatekeeper. Then the whisper spread like Hamatan fire. "She's been married almost 12 years, Abi? I heard she has tried everything: hospital, prayer, mountain, even herbalists. Some say it's a curse. Others say the chief got another woman pregnant before. Rumor is a cruel wind. It finds its way through every crack." At first, Madam Nkem ignored them. She buried herself in work, in charity events, in church fundraisers, smiling wide for photographs beside bishops and first ladies. But when the whispers reached her mother-in-law, Mama Tobena, things turned dark. That Sunday, after church, Mama Tobena sat heavily in the parlor of the Okafor mansion. Her voice, though calm, carried the sharp edge of disapproval. "My daughter," she began, adjusting her head tie, "you are a good woman. You have brought honor to this family. But a tree that does not bear fruit cannot be the pride of the forest." Madam Nkem lowered her gaze, her manicured fingers clutching her wrapper. "Mama, I have not stopped trying. God's time, God's time." "Yes," the older woman cut in, "but maybe you should help his time a little. In my days, if the first wife could not conceive, we brought in another wife. The man must have children to carry his name." That night, after Mama left, Nkem cried until the stars blurred through her tears. Chief Tobena held her close, whispering, "Forget Mama. You are my wife, my peace. We will be fine. God will answer us." But as the years stretched, that comfort began to sound like an echo, fading, repeating, and finally hollow. By her 11th year of marriage, Nkem had been to every renowned fertility clinic in Lagos, Abuja, and even Ghana. She had tried IVF thrice. She had fasted 40 days with Prophetess Charity, who made her drink spiritual milk every midnight. She had even climbed the mountains of Nsuka to pray barefoot under the moon. Nothing. The emptiness began to haunt her. When she saw mothers walking their children to school, something in her chest burned with envy and guilt. She began to dream of a crying baby, sometimes in a golden cradle, sometimes wrapped in rags, always crying, always reaching for her. Then, one day, fate came disguised as a woman selling akara by the roadside. It was a humid Tuesday morning. Nkem's car had broken down near Mile 12 Market, and while her driver struggled with the radiator, she stepped out, fanning herself beside a small akara store. The woman frying beans cake looked about 50, her eyes deep and knowing. "Madam, you look troubled," the akara seller said softly, handing her a chair. "Sit, rest small." Nkem smiled faintly. "Just kawahala." But the woman shook her head. "No, not just kawahala. Your spirit is restless. I can see it." Nkem blinked. "How do you know?" The woman smiled with that eerie calm some old souls have. "Because your heart cries for what your womb could not hold. You want a child, don't you?" Something froze in Nkem's veins. She had never seen this woman before. "Who told you that?" "The wind tells me many things," the woman replied, turning her akara in hot oil. "Your blessings are tied to a child, but not one born from your belly. You will find her before the next full moon in a place of forgotten souls. Bring her home love her, and your house will know peace. Nkem stared. A place of forgotten souls? What did that even mean? Before she could ask more, a crowd gathered. Someone had recognized her from TV. By the time she turned back, the Akara woman was gone. Only the faint smell of beans cake lingered, and the words that now echoed in her head. Your blessings are tied to a child, not born from your belly. A week later, something strange happened. Her church, Christ Dominion Tabernacle, announced a charity visit to Street Teresa's home for orphans in Surulere. She hadn't planned to go. But that night, she dreamed again, this time of the Akara woman standing beside a crying baby in a dim orphanage. When she woke up, her heart was pounding. Tobena, she whispered to her husband, I want to go to that orphanage. He frowned, half asleep. You mean the one from Church Bulletin? Yes, I feel like God wants me there. The orphanage smelled of antiseptic and pap. Children's laughter floated down the narrow corridors as volunteers distributed toys and food. When Nkem entered, every child seemed to reach for her tiny hands, grabbing at her gown, eyes wide with hope. But then, from the far corner, she noticed a little girl sitting alone by the window, thin, quiet, with big haunting eyes. The matron noticed her gaze. Ah, that one, she said gently. Her name is Chidima, came here as a baby. Nobody knows her real parents. She doesn't talk much. Nkem crouched beside the girl. Hello, my dear. What are you drawing? The girl held up a paper. It was a crude sketch, a woman and a man holding hands, and between them, a small child. That's a beautiful picture, Nkem said softly. Chidima looked up, her voice barely a whisper. It's you. Nkem froze. Me? You come for me. I saw you in my dream. Something in that moment cracked open inside Nkem as if time stood still and heaven held its breath. Let's take her. That night, she told Tobena everything. Her dream, the Akara woman's prophecy, the child's words, everything. He listened silently, his brow furrowed. Nkem, are you sure this is wise? Adoption is not a small matter. People will talk. You know how our society is. Let them talk, she said firmly. I've prayed for a child all my life. Maybe God wants to give me one this way. After a long silence, he sighed. If this will bring you peace, then let's do it. Within weeks, paperwork was done. The Okafor mansion that once echoed with silence now rang with laughter. The staff adored little Chidima, who was about 6 then. Even Chief Tobena, who at first kept his distance, began to smile more. Every morning, Chidima would tiptoe into their room shouting, Mommy, Daddy, wake up, it's morning. And just like that, the emptiness began to fade. For 2 years, life blossomed again. Nkem was radiant, full of purpose. She enrolled Chidima in the best school, dressed her in matching Ankara on Sundays, and proudly introduced her as our daughter at every event. People admired her generosity. Others whispered that she had finally found peace. Even Mama Tobena, though reluctant at first, accepted the girl after seeing her bright manners. But something subtle began to shift in the air. It started with small things, missing jewelry, Chidima talking in her sleep, sudden fevers that came and went mysteriously. One night, the housemaid swore she saw the child standing outside at 2 a.m., staring into the garden, humming an old song in a language nobody recognized. When asked about it, Chidima would only smile and say, Mommy, my other mother used to sing it. Nkem frowned. Other mother? Who? The girl tilted her head innocently. The one that visits me when you sleep. She says she'll come for me soon. That night, Nkem lay awake, heart pounding, staring into the dark. A month later, Chief Tobena traveled to Port Harcourt for business. He was meant to return after 3 days. On the second night, Nkem dreamed of Chidima again, standing by the window, whispering, Mommy, something bad is coming. The next morning, she received a call. Chief Tobena's car had been in an accident on the east-west road. He survived but barely. For weeks, he lay in hospital. Nkem spent every day by his bedside, praying, crying, bargaining with heaven. Chidima, meanwhile, became withdrawn, sitting alone and humming that strange lullaby. One night, when Nkem returned home from the hospital, she found the child sitting in the parlor, candles lit around her, her eyes distant. Chidima, what are you doing? The girl looked up slowly. I was praying. Praying with candles. Who taught you that? My other mother, she says daddy will leave if you promise her something. Nkem felt her knees weaken. Promise who? What? That you will never send me away, even when the truth comes. And that was the night everything began to unravel. For 3 nights after the candle incident, Madam Nkem could barely sleep. The echo of Chidima's words, "Never send me away, even when the truth comes," played in her mind like a broken record. She told herself it was childish talk, maybe trauma from the orphanage, but deep down, something in her spirit refused to settle. Miraculously, Chief Tobena recovered faster than the doctors predicted. Within a month, he was back home, limping slightly but alive. Everyone called it a miracle. Nkem was certain it was her prayers that saved him, but the night he returned, as they sat together on the couch, Chidima walked in quiet, barefoot, clutching her teddy bear. "Daddy," she said softly, "I told you I was praying for you." Tobena smiled, his voice tender. "Yes, my angel, God heard you." The girl smiled faintly, but then she added, "Not God, the woman who stands by my window." The living room grew cold. Nkem's hand froze on her husband's arm. "Which woman, Chidima?" she asked, her tone too calm. "The one that sings for me at night," the child said, looking at her mother with serious eyes. "She says she used to know you." Nkem's mouth went dry. Tobena frowned, trying to brush it off. "Ah, Nkem, it's just child imagination. Maybe she means her guardian angel." But Nkem didn't answer. She was staring past the girl at the window. The curtains fluttered, though no breeze had entered. By the next week, she couldn't ignore it anymore. Strange things were happening in the house. The smell of burning candles in rooms no one entered. Shadows flickering where lights should have been. Still, whispers in the night calling, "Nkem, Nkem." Finally, she confided in her close friend, Sister Amara, a zealous member of her church's prayer band. Amara listened, wide-eyed. "Ah, Nkem, this one you're telling me, it's not ordinary. You must go and see Prophet Oduka. He's powerful. He sees what eyes cannot." Nkem hesitated. "But you know I don't believe in all these prophet things anymore. Half of them just want money." Amara shook her head. "This one is different. He doesn't collect a kobo unless God shows him something." Reluctantly, Nkem agreed. The prophet's house was on the outskirts of Ikorodu, small, plain, and surrounded by trees that hummed with insects. The moment they entered, Prophet Oduka, an elderly man with eyes sharp as glass, looked up and said, "Madam Nkem Okafor, you brought something home that was not meant to be yours." Her heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "A child," he said calmly, closing his eyes. "But not just any child. She was marked long before you met her. A spirit follows her, a mother bound by oaths." "Oaths?" Nkem whispered. "What kind of oaths?" A mother's cry that turned into a curse. The child was taken from her unjustly, and now her spirit refuses to rest. But the orphanage said her parents abandoned her. Prophet Oduka shook his head slowly. "Sometimes, the story written on paper is not the story written in heaven." Nkem clutched her purse, trembling. "Then what do I do?" The prophet's voice softened. "Do not hate the child. She is innocent, but the spirit that claims her will test you. You must choose love, even when it hurts. Only then will peace return." That night, Nkem sat awake, watching Chidima sleep peacefully in her bed. The child's face looked so calm, so harmless, that Nkem almost laughed at herself for believing in curses. But then, as the moonlight touched the child's face, Nkem saw its faint lines etched on the girl's wrist, like markings of old tribal symbols. She leaned closer. The moment her fingers brushed them, Chidima's eyes shot open. "Mommy," she whispered, "you went to see him, didn't you?" "Who?" "The man who talks to the wind. He told you not to send me away." Nkem's blood ran cold. "How did you?" "I heard him," the girl said, her eyes glassy. "And I heard her too. She says you will break your promise." Nkem's voice trembled. "What promise, my child?" "To keep me, no matter what happens." Weeks passed. Nkem tried to return to normal school runs, work, church, but the air in the mansion remained heavy. Even the house staff began quitting quietly, muttering about strange shadows and whispered prayers in the hallways. One afternoon, while cleaning her home office, Nkem found a forgotten brown envelope, the orphanage adoption file. She had looked at it a dozen times before, but something urged her to open it again. As she flipped through the papers, a loose document slipped out, an old medical record from a rural clinic in Enugu State. The name caught her attention. Patient Adeze Noafo. Below, it said, mother deceased after childbirth, no burial certificate issued. The date matched the same year Chidima was born. But that wasn't the strangest part. At the bottom of the page was a note written hastily. Child taken under questionable circumstances. Investigate if needed. Nkem's heart pounded. Could it be the same child? Was her daughter taken, not abandoned? She dialed the orphanage number immediately, demanding to speak to the matron. The woman's voice on the phone trembled slightly. Madam, please, some records are old. I don't know all the details. You told me she was abandoned. That's what we were told, ma. The baby was dropped off by a man who said the mother died during childbirth. We never saw him again. What man? Silence. Madam, please, I beg you, some things are better left alone. By the next morning, Nkem was on the road to Enugu, her driver beside her. She didn't tell Tobena. She just said she needed to check on an old business contact. When she arrived at the dusty village hospital, it looked barely functional, cracked walls, rusty beds, a sleepy nurse at the front desk. She showed the nurse the documents. The woman frowned. Ah, this handwriting. That's from old Dr. Nwok. He died 2 years ago, but his daughter still lives nearby. Maybe she can help. An hour later, Nkem found herself in a small compound, facing a middle-aged woman who looked weary but kind. Yes, the woman said, scanning the paper. I remember that case. My father talked about it often. The mother, Ades, was very young, maybe 18. She came here one night in labor, alone. She was crying that her people had cast her out. Cast her out? Nkem repeated. Yes, they said she got pregnant for a man of another tribe. When the child was born, her family refused to take her back. She died 2 days later. But before she died, the woman paused. She kept saying her child would bring justice to those who wronged her. And the baby, a man came 2 days later claiming to be from a Lagos charity, said he'd take the baby to an orphanage. My father let him. Nkem's heart sank. It was all true. The child wasn't abandoned by choice, she was taken. Back in Lagos, everything felt different. So, when Nkem entered her house, Chidima was waiting at the top of the stairs, clutching her door. You found her, the girl said quietly. Nkem froze. Found who? My real mother. The door dropped from the child's hands, and before Nkem could react, the lights flickered. A cold wind swept through the parlor, carrying a faint sound, a woman's voice, humming that same strange lullaby. For a moment, Nkem saw her, a figure in white, standing by the window, eyes full of sorrow. Why? The ghost whispered. Why take what was not yours? I didn't know, Nkem cried out, trembling. I thought I was saving her. You were saving yourself, the voice replied, but a child's destiny cannot be bought. Chidima's eyes glowed faintly as tears streamed down her cheeks. Mommy, she's angry. She says the man who took me was the same one that cursed her. What man? Nkem asked, breathless. The child's voice trembled. The one who wanted to sell me, the one that gave me to the orphanage. He said he worked for Daddy. Nkem staggered backward. What did you say? He said he worked for Daddy, the girl repeated, whispering now. He had the same name tag, Okafor Estates. For a second, the world stopped spinning. She could hear only her heartbeat fast, erratic, unbelieving. Could it be true? Could Tobena have known? That night, she waited until Tobena returned from his meeting. He walked into the living room smiling, but his face fell when he saw her pale expression. What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. Maybe I have, she said quietly. Tobena, who arranged Chidima's adoption. He frowned. What kind of question is that? We both did, through the orphanage. Who brought her there? How would I know? Answer me. He rubbed his temples, sighing. Nkem, I didn't want to tell you before, but yes, one of my agents helped handle the paperwork. I gave him money to make it fast. Why? Nkem's lips trembled. That agent took the baby from a dying mother. You bought her. He froze. What? You bought our child, Tobena. You took someone's baby like property. That's nonsense. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. They stood facing each other, the air heavy with accusation and disbelief. Then from the corner of the room came a sound, soft at first, then growing. The lullaby. The candles went out. When the lights flickered back, Chidima was standing between them, eyes blank, voice not her own. She cries for justice. The voice said through the child, and justice will come through the one she loves most. Then the glass chandelier above them shattered. From that night, the mansion knew no peace. Tobena fell sick again, this time with no medical explanation. The doctor said his blood pressure was fine, his organs perfect, but his body was shutting down. At night, he screamed, calling Nkem's name. By day, he barely recognized her. Nkem prayed, fasted, brought pastors, imams, anyone who could help, but nothing worked. One evening, as the rain poured heavily, Chidima entered their room. Her face was pale, her voice small. Mommy, the woman says she'll stop if Daddy tells the truth. What truth? That he didn't just buy me. He knew my mother. Nkem's jaw dropped. What? He was the man who promised to marry her, the child said, tears streaming down her face. The one who left her when she got pregnant. The walls seemed to shake with thunder as the truth hit. Tobena, barely able to breathe, looked up from his sick bed, eyes wide. Nkem, it's true. I didn't know it was her child. Adaize was years ago, before we married. You thought she died, and you let it go. Nkem whispered. And the child you gave me was hers. He coughed violently, clutching his chest. Please, forgive me. That night, Nkem stood in the living room holding a photo, Chidima smiling between her and Tobena. Her tears fell onto the frame. The spirit's voice filled the air again. He must pay. A life for a life. No, Nkem cried. He's my husband. You swore to keep the child no matter what, the voice said. Love demands sacrifice. Nkem looked at Chidima, trembling, confused, afraid. Mommy, please don't let her take me. I won't, my baby. I won't. Then she turned to the unseen spirit. If a life must be taken, take mine instead. Let him live. Let her live. There was silence. Then a soft whisper. So be it. A wind swept through the house, fierce and cold. The lights exploded, and Nkemdilim fell to the ground. When Tobena woke the next morning, he was healed, the fever gone, but beside him, his wife lay still, eyes closed, face peaceful. Chidima sat beside her, holding her hand. She said you'd wake up, the child whispered, but she wouldn't. The mansion in Lekki had never been so quiet. 3 days after Madam Nkem's death, the house seemed to mourn with them. Curtains stayed drawn, lights dim, and even the breeze outside carried a strange heaviness. Chief Tobena Okafor, now suddenly aged, walked through the halls like a ghost himself, eyes hollow, voice gone, weighed down by a guilt that could drown oceans. Every sound reminded him of her, the echo of her laughter, the soft way she used to say his name, the way she'd hum gospel songs while dressing for church. Now, all that remained was silence and the child she died to protect. The Okafor compound was filled with people, family, friends, church members, business associates. They came in expensive lace, crying performative tears, whispering behind sunglasses. Ah, what a tragedy. Such a good woman. Some say she was under spiritual attack. They say she died in her husband's place. Imagine, Mama Tobena sat in a corner, her wrapper tied loosely, her head bowed in shame. She couldn't even look at her son. When the pastor stood to speak, his voice quivered. We may not understand why the righteous perish, why the wicked live, but God's ways are higher than ours. Madam Nkemdilim lived a life of giving. Her love was boundless even unto death. Chief Tobena didn't flinch. He just stared at the coffin. His mind replayed her final words. If a life must be taken, take mine instead. Weeks passed. The world moved on, as it always does. But Tobena didn't. He stopped going to work. His once impeccable suits hung loose on his thinning frame. The mansion that once rang with laughter now felt like a tomb. Chidima, now 7, grew quieter each day. Sometimes she would sit by the window and talk softly, as if to someone unseen. Other times, she'd hum that haunting lullaby, the one her other mother used to sing. Every time Tobena heard it, his heart clenched. One afternoon, he entered her room quietly and sat beside her. Chidima, he said softly. Does she still talk to you, the woman in white? The little girl turned to him slowly, eyes wide. She doesn't talk anymore. She watches. Watches. She watches you. She said you haven't told the truth yet. He swallowed hard. What truth? You have to go back, she said simply, to where you left her. For days, those words haunted him. He knew what they meant. He had to go back to Enugu, to the place where it all began. It had been nearly 8 years since that night with Adaeze, the young woman whose love he had betrayed, whose child he had unknowingly brought back into his own home. He remembered everything now. The night he left her, pregnant and crying, his empty promises, the guilt he buried under business and money. He had thought time had erased it. But time only buried what guilt could not wash away. So one morning, before dawn, he packed a small bag, kissed the sleeping Chidima on the forehead, and whispered, "Your mother deserves peace. I'll bring it to her." Then he left for Enugu. The road was long, the air heavy with memories. He stopped at a small Catholic church on the outskirts of Nsukka, the same one mentioned in the old medical record. An old priest greeted him at the gate. "Good afternoon, my son. You look like a man searching for something." "For someone," Tobena said quietly. Her name was Adaeze Nwafo. She died many years ago after childbirth. I need to find where she was buried. The priest frowned. "Ah, that name. Yes, she was brought here long ago. Poor girl. No one claimed her body, so we gave her a small grave behind the chapel." He led Tobena to a quiet field behind the church, a place overgrown with weeds and wildflowers. A weathered wooden cross leaned to one side. The name Adaeze Nwafo was barely legible. Tobena fell to his knees. "Adaeze," he whispered, "I failed you. I failed our child. I took from you what I had no right to take." Tears streamed down his face as he bowed his head to the ground. "Forgive me. I didn't know the baby was ours. I didn't know." A cold wind brushed his face, carrying a faint voice, soft, sorrowful, but not angry. "You knew once. You just forgot." He looked up. For a moment, the world shimmered. He saw her standing above the grave, her face calm, eyes glistening like the morning dew. "Tobena," she said, her voice echoing through his heart. "You stole what love had already given, but the one who paid your price has set you free. Cherish the life she gave you. Don't waste it on guilt." He reached out, trembling. "Adaeze," but she was gone. Only the whisper of the wind remained. When he returned to Lagos, something in him had changed. The guilt still lingered, but softer, no longer eating him alive. He found Chidima waiting by the gate. The moment she saw him, she ran into his arms. "Daddy, she's smiling now," the girl said brightly. "The woman in white. She said you said sorry." He smiled weakly. "Yes, my love, I said sorry." From that day, the house began to heal slowly. The lights no longer flickered, the whispers ceased, and the air grew lighter, but the shadow of loss never left entirely. Every night, Tobena would sit by Nkem's photo in the living room, a candle burning before it, and whisper, "You gave your life for mine. I'll spend the rest of mine honoring you." Years passed. Chidima grew into a beautiful young woman, quiet, wise, beyond her years, with an aura of peace that drew people to her. She had Nkem's kindness, Adaeze's eyes, and something otherworldly about her spirit. One evening, when she was 16, she walked into her father's study carrying a sketchbook. "Daddy," she said softly, "I drew something for you." He looked at the drawing. It showed 3 women, one in white, one in gold, and one in blue, standing together, holding hands around a small child. "Who are they?" he asked, voice trembling. "My mother's," she said simply. "The one who gave me life, the one who gave me love, and the one who gave me peace." Tears filled his eyes. He reached out and hugged her tightly. "You are the bridge between them, my child," he whispered. "You are the proof that love survives death." But destiny, as always, was not done yet. When Chidima turned 18, she received a scholarship to study fine arts abroad. Before leaving, she insisted on visiting Nkem's grave. She went alone, carrying a small basket of white flowers. As she stood by the tombstone, she whispered, "Mommy, I'm leaving soon, but I'll never forget what you taught me, that love isn't about blood, it's about sacrifice." As she placed the flowers down, a soft wind lifted her hair and she heard a faint, familiar voice, Go, my child, live, for that is how you honor the dead. She smiled, not afraid, not sad, just peaceful. Years later, 20 years passed. Chief Tobena became a quiet man devoted to charity, building schools and orphanages in memory of his late wife. The largest one, the Nkemdilim Home for Children, became a sanctuary for orphans across Nigeria. When reporters asked him why he dedicated his life to helping children, he would always say, "Because once I took a child to heal my pain, and she healed my soul instead." He never remarried. He didn't need to. His heart had been filled by love, loss, and redemption. As for Chidima, she became an artist known across Africa for her paintings of 3 women and a child, an image that became her signature. She said every brushstroke carried a story of the women who taught me that motherhood has many faces. Many years later, when Chief Tobena died peacefully in his sleep, people said they saw something strange that night. The housemaid swore she saw a woman in white standing at the foot of his bed, smiling. Another claimed to have heard soft humming the same lullaby that once haunted the mansion. When Chidima arrived from abroad for the funeral, she found his Bible open to a single verse, marked with tears. "Greater love had no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." John 15:13. She closed the Bible gently and whispered, "Not friends, Daddy, but a wife who became a savior." As she looked up, she saw the 3 women faint, glowing, standing together in the corner of the room. Adais, Nkemdilim, and an ethereal figure that seemed to blend them both. They smiled at her and then slowly faded into light. Years later, villagers and city folk alike would tell the story of Madam Nkemdilim Okafor, the wealthy woman who took in an orphan and paid with her life. They would whisper about the child who carried 2 mothers' spirits and the husband who spent the rest of his life repenting. And every time someone told the story, they would end it with the same words: "A child is not claimed by the womb that bore them, but by the heart that loved them. And when love demands a price, only the pure of heart can pay it willingly." Decades later, an old woman sat beneath a mango tree outside the Nkemdilim Home for Children. Her hair was silver, her hands steady as she painted the sunset. Around her, children laughed and played the air full of joy. It was Chidima now, Mama Chidi, as everyone called her. A young volunteer approached, curious about the painting she was working on. "Mama, you always paint the same thing, those 3 women and the baby. Who are they really?" She smiled, eyes glimmering. "They are the reason you and I are standing here, my dear. They remind me that love can be born from pain, that forgiveness can cleanse the deepest sin, and that sometimes the richest heart is the one that learned through loss." The girl nodded slowly, her eyes wide with wonder. "So, it's a true story?" Chidima chuckled softly. "The truest one ever told." She lifted her brush one last time, adding a soft glow around the figures on the canvas. As the sun dipped below the horizon, 3 gentle figures seemed to shimmer in the distance, one in white, one in gold, one in blue, watching over the children, forever bound by the love that conquered death. Moral of the story: true motherhood is not measured by blood, but by love and sacrifice. When we take from others selfishly, life finds a way to restore balance, often at a price. Redemption begins where truth is finally spoken and forgiveness replaces pride. Love real, selfless love does not die. It simply changes form to watch over those it once held.